Welcome to TUC Half Hour. I am Festus Osifo. TUC Half Hour is sponsored by the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria. On the program, we delve deep into the heart of labor movement in Nigeria, examining its challenges, triumphs, and the future directions of the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, as well as its affiliate members. Before I bring you the rest of the program, here's a fun trivia question. What year did the International Labour Organization become an agency of the United Nations? Stay tuned till the end of the program to find out what the answer is. Meanwhile, TUC Half Hour will be right back after this break.
Comrade Engineer Festus Osifo is the president of the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria and also doubles as the president of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASSAN. Our guest holds a bachelor's degree in Mechanical and Manufacturing Engineering from the University of Portsmouth in United Kingdom with a first-class honors. He is an alumnus of Herod Watts University, Edinburgh, Scotland, where he bagged his master's degree in Petroleum Engineering. In 2022, he obtained an MBA from the Lagos Business School, Lagos, Nigeria. He holds a certificate in Advanced Negotiation, Industrial Relations, and Conflict Resolution from Harvard University, Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA. Comrade Festus Osifo has spent about 2 decades working in the oil and gas industry in a sterling career spanning Schlumberger Nigeria Limited and Total Energies Exploration and Production Nigeria Limited. He has served on several boards, both in public and private sector. Through his 2 NGOs, Festus Osifo Foundation and Save Our Children Education Initiative, Comrade Festus Osifo has transcended trade unionism to intervening in humanity, mentorship, and leadership development. Our guest is a registered engineer with the Council of Registered Engineers of Nigeria, a member of Nigerian Society of Engineers and Society of Petroleum Engineers.
As Nigeria navigates a complex economic landscape, the role of our labor unions have never been more crucial, and at the forefront of this movement is a dynamic leader who has been steering the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria through these turbulent times. He's also the president of PENGASSAN, an affiliate member of the Trade Union Congress, and has been very instrumental in negotiations that affect millions of Nigerian workers, including the landmark agreement on a new minimum wage. Join me as I welcome Comrade Festus Osifo, the president of Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, to the program. Thank you so much for joining me on the program.
Thank you so much, Faiz. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. So let's delve straight into it. As the visionary behind this program, the TUC Half Hour, and this being the maiden episode, what would you say is the aim, really, of this program?
Yes. This program was conceived by the leadership of Trade Union Congress of Nigeria and also approved by the National Executive Council of Trade Union Congress of Nigeria in our last meeting that was held in the last week of April 2024. So one of the reasons, amongst others, is actually that Nigerians, not all Nigerians actually appreciate and understand the role and the jobs that trade unionists do. They always believe that you are not, for you to be a good trade unionist, you must be on the street shouting and fighting. But they don't know that for every single fight that you take to the streets, there are 1,000 of them that you have settled behind the scene. So we are hosting this program to make people understand the crucial role that trade unions are playing in the life of its members in the nook and cranny of Nigeria, and to showcase all the things that we are doing behind the scene that is not there in the public domain.
Great. That's quite laudable. Now, earlier you mentioned agreements and negotiations, for members. And that brings me to, the minimum wage agreement. First of all, congratulations on that landmark achievement of a new minimum wage.
Thank you so much, Faiz.
However, you agreed on a 70,000 naira minimum wage, and you had initially, the labor union, had initially presented 615,000 naira to the president. What informed going from 615 to actually agree to 70,000?
Yes. So when you are going for negotiations, first of all, you try to size your opponent. When you size your opponent, you understand the area they are coming from. So that will help you in your preparations. I will tell you that the only reason that we achieved 70,000 naira minimum wage today was because of where we started. Because the thinking of government, the thinking of those in the tripartite committee, their initial thought was that the minimum wage should not exceed about 54,000 naira. So that was their initial thought. So this was before we went to the table. So when we sized it, we saw where they were coming from. So we wanted to also shock them and start talking about living wage instead of minimum wage. And we started from 615,000 naira. If we had started from maybe somewhere around 200,000 naira, I could tell you that we will not have been able to achieve this today. You could see the fight it took for us to even get to that 70,000, because when they got to 60,000, they felt they have done much more than their initial plan of 54,000. So it cost, a lot of strike, a lot of fight, a lot of push for us to even achieve that extra 10,000 naira minimum wage on top. So it was a strategy from the labor union.
So can you just take me through the journey, of actually the minimum wage, the fight for the minimum wage till we got to, this agreement?
Yes. So the law that sets up the minimum wage, if you could remember very well, the last minimum wage act was signed in April 2019 by President Muhammadu Buhari. So in that April 2019, when it was signed, the sum of 30,000 naira, was signed. Then it became a law. Right. So it was now established that in the next 5 years, we are going to have other conversations around the minimum wage. So the tripartite committee ought to meet, reach an agreement. Then that agreement will now be forwarded to Mr. President. So it's the president that has the prerogative to forward what we have agreed and to the National Assembly, who also have the prerogative to make law, tweak it up or down. But because in the committee we did not agree, we proposed 250,000 naira to Mr. President. While the organized private sector and government, they proposed the sum of 62,000 naira to the president. So when that now came, then the president had to now do further consultation by inviting all our stakeholders at different times. Then he also met with labor, where we now also made our case known to him. Why we think that the sum of 62,000 naira cannot, as of today, serve the interests of Nigerian workers. So it was now based on that. After lots of conversations and all that, the sum of 70,000 naira was now agreed on. And in agreeing on that, we also looked at our benchmark, our initial benchmark. Because in negotiations, there are principles around negotiations. And one of the key principles around negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement or minimum wage is actually the instrument of inflation. So we took all that into account before we agreed at the sum of 70,000 naira.
So what would you say about, public perception that, labor leaders usually would compromise in, negotiations such as this one? And I ask that because a lot of, when the labor union had come up with the living wage, so to speak, a lot of Nigerians were excited because it felt like what should be obtainable. And then the news broke out that it was 70,000 and it kind of felt like 70,000 naira in today's Nigeria with the inflation rates and, the food prices and all of that would not necessarily account to anything. What would you say about that perception?
Okay, yes, clearly on that, there are principles that guide negotiations on wage increase.
Right.
I was at the time the branch chairman of PENGASSAN in Total Energies. Mm-hmm. So when we are having negotiations, we sit down with management, we look at economic parameters, and the driver of most of these, or of where we are going to conclude, is going to be inflation. So now, if you recall, the last minimum wage was signed into law on the 18th day of April 2019 by former President Muhammadu Buhari. So if you now look at inflation 1 year after then till date, it will give you an indication of where the minimum wage should be. So now, if you are in 2020, the inflation was somewhere around 12.34.
Right. In
2021, the inflation figure, as released by MBS, was somewhere around 18.12. In 2022, the inflation figure came down to 16.82. In 2023, April 2023, the inflation figure went up again to 22.22. Then April this year, the inflation figure came out to around 33.69. So this is how you do the calculation. You take 30,000, 2019, April. You apply the inflation of April 2020 to it. It will, if you apply that figure, I read that earlier, it's going to move it to around 33,000. If you will now apply the inflation figure of 2021 to that 33,000, it will move it to a point. So if you apply this inflation figure in the last 5 years, inflation figure of 2020, April 2021, April 2022, April 2023, and April 2024, you are going to arrive at about 75,000 naira.
Okay.
So that means if we achieve 75,000 naira, we have compensated for inflation 100%. But in negotiations, there is always horse trading, give and take. As unions, we asked ourselves, is it better you take 75,000 and you come and negotiate in 5 years' time? Or you make some level of concessions here and there. So it was at that point that when the president now talked about 70,000, that was why we now accepted 70,000 to be renegotiated 3 years. Now, if you look at where we ought to be, it's about 75,000 naira.
Right.
So if you find the ratio, 70 divided by 75,000, you see that it was about 92% performance. So that is it. Yes, you asked me earlier, why did we start from where we started from? It's actually because they were not willing to even get to 70,000. They were willing to end it around 54. So that was why we started discussing about the concept of living wage. Now, talking about the issues around compromises. I don't blame Nigerians. I was actually like them some time ago. At a time, I was a floor member, what we call Congress member in PENGASSAN, so I wasn't holding any position. Few years later, I was elected into the branch executive as the public relation officer. Then I had the opportunity to take a course on negotiations in Harvard Business School. So the first question I asked the professor that was teaching us was, why is it that you go to negotiations and you go with high figures, and at the end of the day, you are coming up with something that is not up to where you started from, number one. And then number two, why is it that people always think that I thought of that as well, that the leaders that go and have these conversations, that they always compromise? She laughed for almost 2 minutes. The professor now explained something. He said, number one, that when you are going for negotiations, that you are going to build, you know your baseline. You will now build markup into it. That when you that markup you are building depends on those you are negotiating with, depends on the environment, depends on the circumstance, depends on the sincerity of the people. One thing she now said is that that negotiation is art, negotiation is science. That when you are going to negotiations, that let what you agree with be driven by data. Right. It should not be driven by emotions. It should not be driven by sentiment. And that is exactly what we have done today. If you apply the inflation overall, totally, without reservation, you are going to arrive at about 75,000 naira plus. Right. And one thing people must also understand is what we call the consequential adjustment. So a lot of people does not really understand the implication of the 70,000 naira that we have negotiated. 70,000 naira from 30,000 naira is 133% increment. Let me explain to you how this works. Today, there is nobody in the civil service, both state and federal, that is earning minimum wage. Okay. There is minimum wage is meant for someone in grade level 1, step 1. But if you join civil service with BSc, with even school certificate, you are going to come in at grade level 4. Okay. So let's assume we have Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom was employed by Federal Civil Service with school cert. And Mr. Tom is earning the sum of 60,000 naira as at today. With the 133% minimum wage increment that we have done, Mr. Tom is going to move from 60,000 naira to somewhere around 130,000 naira plus.
The Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria welcomes invited guests and members to the 3rd edition of PENGASSAN Energy and Labour Summit, PEELS 2024, with the theme, The Future of Nigeria's Oil and Gas Industry, Energy Mix, Energy Security, Artificial Intelligence, Divestment and Crude Oil Theft. Date is Wednesday, 21st to Friday, 23rd of August 2024 at the Congress Hall Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. Time 10 a.m. daily. Special guest of honor, Senator Heineken Lokobiri, Minister of State Petroleum Oil. Honorable Ekwerigbe Eko, Minister of State Petroleum Gas, Chairman Senate and House Committee on Petroleum Upstream, Downstream and Gas. Keynote speakers, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, National Security Advisor, Mele Kolo Kyari, Group CEO NNPC Limited, Engineer Gbenga Komolafe, Commission Chief Executive, Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Engineer Farouk Ahmed, Authority Chief Executive, Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, Mr. Felix Ogbe, Executive Secretary, NCDMB, and other prolific experts in the field. The event will round up with a gala night on Friday, 23rd of August that will see to the presentation of awards in recognition of winners of the PENGASSAN National Essay Competition for secondary schools in Nigeria. Chief host, Comrade Engineer Festus Osifo, President, Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASSAN. Announcer, Lumumba Okubawa, General Secretary, PENGASSAN.
So what's the implication of the new minimum wage on Nigerians? That's one. And secondly, we saw a video where, Labour members were giving salutes to the president after that was announced. So what was that about? Okay. So just quickly announce.
Okay. So on both of them. So I think let me finish the story of Mr. Tom. Right. Then that would explain the first one. Right. For a university graduate, for example, who came into civil service and is earning about 120,000 naira. So at that level, because normally the full percentage is always applied up to maybe grade 7, grade 8. Right. So now, if you apply that to the person earning 120,000, the person will be niching towards 300,000 naira. So that is actually the implication it had in the larger workforce. But just that, as you are getting to the top, assistant director, directors, deputy directors, permanent secretaries, they will not apply the full 133% increment. They will not taper it down a bit. Then talking about the salutation that was given to the president, the three Bozas, you know, on that particular day, that Thursday, there was a rally that was organized by SANU and NASU about their withheld salaries. Right. So we brought it before the president. Right. We told the president, the NLC president started it, and I gave it a lot of support that the president needs to do something about this. So the president, after looking at it, he now said, okay, that no work, no pay is in the law. That no work, no pay is part of Nigerian law. Right. That because they did not work, that they ought not to be paid. But that as a father of the nation and as a father of everyone, that what he is going to do is that Minister of Education, he was seated there, Minister of Education, Minister of Finance, go and compute all these. Get back to me, I will look at it with the view of paying it. So when the president said that, there was a level of pushback from his lieutenants. They weren't too happy. But the president now owned it, that no, the buck stops at his own table. Right. That he has told them, bring it, I'm going to do what is right. So it was against that backdrop that we gave the president this salutation. It wasn't necessarily because of a minimum wage, because he stood firm against his people who were not happy that the president wants to pay those members.
All right, thank you so much, Comrade, for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much, Faiz. I appreciate it.
It's been such an amazing time.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, TUC Half Hour. We'll be right back after this break.
The leadership of organized labor unions arrived at the State House for the second round of meetings with President Bola Tinubu on the new national minimum wage. The president arrives with his team, including the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the Chief of Staff to the President, some ministers, heads of agencies and aides to the president in attendance. 1.5 hours later, the meeting comes to an end. Cabinet ministers outlined key outcomes of the meeting.
The new national minimum wage that we expect Mr. President to submit to the National Assembly for legislation is 70,000 naira. But that is not all. There is also a boost, like Mr. President has assured, in ensuring that massive investment is going to be made in the area of infrastructure. There is also a deepening of the investment of the federal government in renewable energy. More money is going to go into the acquisition of more buses, the CNG buses.
The review of this minimum wage policy has to be reduced to 3 years. That is, 5 years is too long a time to get any minimum wage review that is not very wealthy.
The labor leaders are more restrained.
That this is going to be done every 3 years. 3 years. The next review will be 3 years. And after that pronouncement, we from Labour, just has been said that, well, we have received what the president has promised.
While commending the president on the commencement of the Student Loan Fund, they insist on strict compliance.
Those that are targeted, not a situation where the children of the rich are the ones who are also able to access the student loans. The parameters must be put in place so that the children of the poor, those that cannot actually afford school fees, should be the target. And they also said they will look at that as well.
The Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria welcomes invited guests and members to the third edition of PENGASSAN Energy and Labour Summit, Peels 2024, with the theme, The Future of Nigeria's Oil and Gas Industry, Energy Mix, Energy Security, Artificial Intelligence, Divestment and Crude Oil Theft. Date is Wednesday, 21st to Friday, 23rd of August 2024 at the Congress Hall Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. Time 10 a.m. daily. Special guest of honor, Senator Heineken Lokbobiri, Minister of State Petroleum Oil. Honorable Ekwerikwe Ekpo, Minister of State Petroleum Gas, Chairman Senate and House Committee on Petroleum Upstream, Downstream and Gas. Keynote speakers, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, National Security Advisor, Mele Kolo Kyari, Group CEO NNPC Limited, Engineer Gbenga Komolafe, Commission Chief Executive, Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Engineer Farouk Ahmed, Authority Chief Executive, Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, Mr. Felix Ogbe, Executive Secretary, NCDMB, and other prolific experts in the field. The event will round up with a gala night on Friday, 23rd of August that will see to the presentation of awards in recognition of winners of the PENGASSAN National Essay Competition for secondary schools in Nigeria. Chief host, Comrade Engineer Festus Osifo, President, Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASSAN. Announcer, Lumumba Okubawa, General Secretary, PENGASSAN.
That's this week's episode of TUC Half Hour. Before I wrap up the program, here's the answer to the trivia question. The International Labour Organization became an agency of the United Nations in 1949. Thank you so much for joining me. Do not forget to follow us across all social media platforms using the handles displayed on your screen. I'm Festus Osifo. See you next week. Bye-bye.